Oh, Mark,
How are you?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Good. Good to meet you.
Good to meet you too. Are you actually there or is that a background?
This is right outside my door. That's the background.
Very
This
nice. But
is
it's
my this is
lovely.
my office building here behind me. There.
Very
You
nice.
know, the new world of Zoom. We all live in virtual.
I know, I know. I used to joke around that in future, when we're back to a little more normal, people have to walk around with a frame around their head so that we can recognize them because we won't recognize them without a frame around their faces.
I don't think we ever go back to normal, Chris. I think
I
I
know,
think
like
lots
that.
of us are changing in ways we never thought we'd be thinking about. So
I know, it
very
feels like that, right?
good.
Disruption. Hey, innovation, disruption. This is the way. This is the way it works, right?
Yeah, yeah. We've just never had it done on such mass scale.
Well, I firmly believe that a lot of times change doesn't occur until you get some kind of massive disruption pushing it, right? I mean, it's kind of like
Yeah.
how you never quit smoking until he has a heart attack or whatever. It's like unless there's some kind of crisis, things don't change. I mean, they just move along slowly. But
Right.
yeah, thanks so much for joining me. This is great. I mean, I was reading your bio and I thought, well, this is great. I want to talk to somebody in this space and find out what's going on innovation wise in the it sounds super interesting. So maybe you can tell me a little bit about what you're working on and your background.
Back up. I just lost your audio for the last
Oh, I'm sorry.
60 seconds or more there. Sorry.
No, I'd love to hear what you guys are working on in your space. I mean, you're working on
Sure.
innovation in education, right?
Right, right. So as Vice President of Research, as across all universities, same situation. You have this office very typically drives the innovation and development of that third leg of the stool. If you think about all the universities, and this is pretty much across the United States, you have a primary teaching mission, you have a primary discovery mission, or research mission, and usually you have a service mission.
Mm-hmm.
And those three create that platform of experiential learning, um, uh, real world immersion into challenges of society, and create that entire educational opportunity, as well as a leading edge developer of new technology and directions. So every university has its own nuances of how it does that, but you know, I try to keep my boss out of jail and keep us all legal and keep everything moving down the road. And you know, it's a constant challenge. So
Keeping your boss out of jail. This sounds like when I used to do some work for Citibank. It was keep us out of the papers. We don't want to
there
be in
you go.
it. You know, do whatever
Yeah.
you want as long as you don't nobody hears about it.
Well, and yeah, absolutely. We all have challenges that way. You know, you're trying to keep off the front page of the newspaper for sure.
Yeah. Well, so these all these crises have really wreaked havoc in the education space. How are you dealing with it all?
Right, right. Um, you know, I I often talk about the challenge of the gap that's been formed, the bubble, and it's pretty significant. So we immediately, as we realized how bad COVID was going to strike us, we wound down all of our programs, literally just wound everything down, and then slowly brought them back into a dispersed density. And so our intent there was to target 20 to 25% density.
Mm-hmm.
And that immediately meant we were shifting researchers into odd hours of the day. We were, of course, pushing everything remote we could. And but there's a limit to how far you can take that. You know, I mean, there are some things you can do remote, and there are some things you must be hands-on. and in the research world. And of course, as you're doing that, even when you come back in a low density, you miss that personal interaction. Training drops off significantly. Creative intuitiveness that we all talk about, the water cooler moment, it all disappears, and you're trying to recreate the feeling of that with technology, but you really truly miss, Joe, you should have just seen what I was struggling with, and someone else say, well, have you thought of this? And you miss all of that. So what you start to create now is this gap, and the gap is due to the lack of that innovation and development. The gap is due to students that aren't finishing and coming out. Those students that are going out, the hiring is so challenging right now. They're all being swept up. That's because there's not enough of a train of students. So we can't hire our laboratory workers. There's just a lack of them, and so this whole gap has opened up. And I think we'll feel this bubble for years to come. It's quite a challenge. So
absolutely. So you're saying a lot of your research work is in person because you're actually working with physical objects and physical devices and things.
Right. So across all of our colleges, we have a lot of hands-on, everything from chemistry and physics to engineering of all different kinds. And a lot of that requires hands-on research. So we have a faculty of about 850, and a majority of them are very engaged in research and really a broad spectrum in terms of what they cover and do. So this has been challenging for them. Interesting side note to all of this is when you push creative people out and say, okay, stay at home and do some work at home, they get thinking, and one of the end results has been an increased number of proposals going out for, hey, here's an idea, how about funding this work? So we have a very significant increase in those proposals, which is good. Hopefully when the world starts to come back to normalcy, we'll be able to implement some of those things. So.
You have more time for deep solitary thinking, but less time for serendipity, right? So, I mean, if you think about it, innovation requires both of those.
Yes, it does.
You don't have serendipity. Then
That's right. So that's an interesting insight there, Chris, because you're right. I cannot tell you how many times I've heard people say, I just don't have time to simply stop and think about it. I'm too busy chasing the next. And so this has sort of created some of that space and time. I do feel for some of our caretakers, all right, those that are caregivers, those that have, elderly parents or children at home. In our world, they're sort of hit with a double whammy. Not only are they, pushed remote out of their research but then they're also in a situation where they have children to care for, and that's concerning. It's taking a big toll on those that really carry those responsibilities.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I did a study for one of our clients talking about the positives and analyzing the work from home situation, and we looked at all of the working remote situations, and almost everything was a positive. Physical well-being, mental well-being, all these things. And but when you actually think about what you're going to lose, it's all the intangibles, right? It's all the chance conversations. So you can say, yes, I'm going to be more effective if I sit at home and nobody's bothering me. But by the same token, all of those intangibles of with other people and socializing and things like that, the numbers that you can't really track. It's kind of like the same with innovation, right? People say, what's the ROI in innovation? Well, I can't tell you that because it really depends on how many strange things knock together to come up with something new. So
yeah, absolutely. In my operation, not only do I have my faculty researchers, but I have a large administrative team that supports them, all of the compliance issues and everything. Now that team is completely re-envisioning their future, completely. It's just, as I'm sure many entities are, business-related service roles like that. We're gaining hours. We have personal satisfaction that's rising significantly. Well-being, time shifting. I cannot tell you how many employees I've said, I'm so happy I can actually start my day at 7, take a break at 9, deal with my youngsters, and then come back in at 1, and just shift all like that. And I said, if it works, as long as the work's getting done. And so we're already rethinking, what do you do with that space that you used to use for all of this? And are there redesigns? Well, one of the places we've had to go to is a redesign of space for training. And so even in those administrative services, you have to train people, and you can do a lot of training online, but there are some things you just have to be a little bit more present, and yet do it in a socially distanced area. And so rethinking some of that space use that way has been intriguing.
Yeah, that's interesting. And if you think about it, I mean, all of our communications has now become intentional, right? I mean, there's no way, you can't just, randomly bump into somebody and start talking about something. You have to seek them out, or you have to initiate the call, or you have to intend to communicate to somebody. You can't just accidentally communicate with anybody. And I think that takes away a lot of, takes a lot out of innovation. We don't have that.
It's also exhausting. I mean, a planned conversation is, it takes a lot, whereas a serendipity type engagement is in some ways, it's empowering and energizing, as opposed to, drawing you down. And yeah, absolutely. That's interesting insight there. For sure.
One of the things I've always, the other thing we found is that is something we were saying about time shifting is, right, we used to have this monolithic block of work, right? We had home, commute, work, commute, home, right? And everyone was monolithic. When you were at work, you were working. When you were at home, you were at home. And then people had complaints about work-life balance because they were doing work from home, right? And now it's like, well, if all of your time is physically at home, then you can chop your work up into modules, right? You can do it, like you said, you can have a block here, a block there, a block here. So it's no longer monolithic. It's like Lego blocks, and you can fit them in wherever you want. And I think where work was going, but this crisis has kind of forced us into that. And I think we might actually end up being better off in the end, because we'll do a better job of managing our time.
Yeah, that's interesting. And that may well be true. I do worry about it, because we have clearly blurred all the barriers. We've blurred all the walls. And though I must admit, I get many more comments about what a gift it's been. But the gifting is largely due to that block of commute that's given back. And as much as they hate everything else, they cherish having that block of commute time given back to them twice a day. And again, we tend to have a fair number of caregivers, and this being able to work from home through this crisis has been a blessing for them, a challenge, but a blessing, for home life. So that's good.
Right. So I notice your background is in food science. Is that the area of specialty that you work in right now?
No, I'm truly just a research administrator now. My passion is feeding the world and trying to figure out how to take care of, as we approach 9 and 10 billion people.
Oh yeah.
heck are we going to create enough food? And that answer is not there yet. And yet we know if we fail, they largely attribute the Arab Spring to food-related unhappiness. That
Really?
Absolutely, much of it being driven. You can go to each of those countries and almost pick up exact times when failure to deliver basic calories just started to create an impounding. So if we don't figure out, food, we have a lot bigger problems on our hands called social anarchy. And
that's interesting. That makes me think of this. There's a science fiction novel I read once where there are calorie machines where you would get like a ration of calories. It would just come in a bar and you would get calories you needed for the day. And, some people got more, like if you did really well, if you really did good things for the community, you got extra rations. Sometimes you actually had flavors added to the calorie bar, but most of the time you could just get the sort of like the base calorie amount. And then, I mean, do you see research heading in that direction at all? Because I mean, I've seen, you see food things that seem to be like meal replacements, but are they really there or?
Yeah. Eating and food is such a pleasurable, sensual experience of life. My God, I hope we never get there, where we lose it. And of course, in those times when you critically just need those calories, thank God you have that bar or whatever. It's really a challenging time. I don't think people understand how critical we rely. Well, maybe we do. After the toilet paper scare of 2020,
our local Costco is empty again. I don't know.
Everyone understands now, just-in-time delivery and how challenging logistics are. But I had that really sent home to me in a big way years ago when I was working at Texas A&M. I had an industry advisory board, and they were all, technology executives from food industry. And I had a wonderful faculty member come in who was talking about logistics and, God help us if we ever lost a bridge going to Canada because we couldn't put our cars together, and it would be catastrophic. Yeah. And the food industry folks looked at this faculty member and said, let us tell you about a catastrophe that will curl your toes, because if we, speaking of losing bridges, if we ever lost the bridges to Manhattan, you have 48 hours. And after that, mass pandemonium, because there's not enough food on that island to feed those millions of people but 2 days, and that's it. You're out. and it's just the way the system's designed. You don't store hordes of food. You deliver it. And I think the food system is changing in a big way. And delivery and distribution is always going to be a challenge. The way we've built our cities and our urban environments, the idea of a victory garden is nice and sweet, but you really can't do that in urban cities, and so there's got to be a better solution, and you can't just plow up every acre of arable land to produce more food. That's not the answer. The cost of that is too dramatic. A loss of biodiversity and everything. We need to have a better efficiency. In some ways, what we truly need is a well-managed industrial, large-scale, very productive farms, so that we can have nature and resources elsewhere. You can't afford to destroy those natural settings. And anyways, it's a real challenge.
Well, I find it interesting. I mean, I get ads for this stuff all the time. Huel and Soylent and all this stuff through Facebook. It's these meal replacements, like drink a
Yeah, yeah,
shake, you're done, right? Those are super popular prior to the outbreak, and now people have time to cook, right? So they don't necessarily need those things. But do you think that's the future of food? Is like we're going to this area where we're just going to be like, here's your case of 30 Soylent
yeah.
bottles. One per day is enough to keep you alive and healthy, and then anything else is gravy on top of that. Do you see that that's where food is going?
I don't really think so. I think what we're going to be seeing for the future is a very creative use of low-cost proteins, vegetable proteins. But as they're restructured, you'll think you're eating a burger. We're already seeing that today, right?
Yeah,
We're already seeing the Impossible Burger, other
yeah, those
things.
are good.
Yeah. So, we're seeing creative uses of current foodstuffs. And, I think, we'll find more efficient ways to do things in many ways. But don't really think we'll find our way to food in a packet. I see the Enterprise up above your head on the shelf there. But just think about what they did. The replicator, right? The replicator on the Enterprise went from energy to manufactured proteins, and suddenly I have Earl Grey tea right in front of me, or whatever it might be. If it's Picard, it's Earl Grey tea. And but that is more likely, a far-fetched future than
Oh,
than
sure. In
dinner
200
and
years, maybe, but between then and now, we might end up somewhere between where we're eating calorie bars, right?
maybe. I hope not, though. I mean, there's a time and place, but I think we'll see creative.
Kind of interesting me is because you were talking about plowing and stuff like that. I mean, there's urban gardening going on. I don't know if you've seen these sort of apartment-sized garden cabinets.
Yes.
It's like hydroponic cabinet that you can.
Yes.
Do those things prepare, like, can they create enough food to sustain somebody, or are they just?
Well, I think it's a fascinating innovation, and we're seeing that in a lot of different replicated ways. I don't know if you've also seen where they've taken a skyscraper and taken alternate floors and
Yeah,
created green space and productivity. The idea of a production in a closed environment is really well perfected now, extraordinarily successful with high yields.
mm-hmm.
So much so you're seeing upscale production of vegetables for restaurants happening these all over the United States and
Okay.
elsewhere too. So
So,
yeah,
so you can get enough yield in one of those things so that
oh
you
yeah.
can feed yourself. Wow, that's
Yeah,
fantastic.
you go to a highly vertical, high density. I mean, it takes a lot you have to put all the effort in there, but that enclosed production environment is hugely successful in that. So, and it's not a far fetch from our greenhouse productions that are happening all over the country.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, now you made me think that the only way those things would be popular is if you were actually making weed in them. But now, if it actually works with real vegetables, that'd be great.
Really, it really does work with real vegetables, and they're great quality. So yeah,
Awesome.
absolutely.
So if I could pivot to education a bit. So we were
Yeah.
talking about how this crisis is affecting education. Where do you see it going? I mean, do you see things staying at this point? Are we going to have to, like, eliminate buildings, or I mean, where do you see things are going?
Yeah. So will we ever go back? We'll never go back to 100% what it was before. We're learning too much in this process to
Mm-hmm.
go back. I think, we'll go back to hybrid scenarios where the appropriate conversation that's introducing a larger group to a kind of thinking, whether it's philosophy or food chemistry 101, whatever that might be, where you're introducing a large group. This to a topic. This is very effective in online education, and I think we have even a lot more to learn about doing that effectively and efficiently. The bigger challenge actually is the last mile, right? Mm-hmm. It's the connectivity back out to the individual who's learning. And that's the bigger challenge. The production of a high quality learning environment is very doable. Of course, from my world, in the research world, I want that to come full circle though, back to a hands-on experiential learning. Right. So I think it's great to introduce and to immerse people using these techniques of a digital environment. But I also want that excitement of a student saying, holy crap, this is unreal. I want to do more of this. And, or a faculty member that just came out of his laboratory and saying, you will not believe what I just did and what this is going to mean for us. And for them to convey that energy, convey that excitement that they just experienced down the hall. And it's probably a completely different class, but that passion all comes out. And suddenly those students are like, wow, okay, I'm with you, and that magic, happens. So I think there's room for both. And I think the good schools will really push both to a maximum, which to your point, Chris, it does mean we'll rethink some of these buildings. We'll rethink some of these hallways and re-envision how they're used in different ways. So
yeah. Well, I think in how the real estate market hasn't actually been impacted yet, but it should be, right? It should be impacted in a huge way, especially here in the Bay Area where we have people living in tiny little $800,000 boxes beside the BART station because it's a closer commute to get to work. If they're not going to need to go to work and they don't really need to be there, why can't they just live in Idaho or something like that?
Absolutely, live anywhere. My son and son-in-law both work for a big engineering firm. They say, guys, you really could be pretty much just about anywhere you want to be, as long as you're here digitally. And they're immediately rethinking, well, where do we want to hang our hat? And Idaho, Montana, Arizona, wherever, the opportunities are there. You're right, for us to be wherever. Again, as long as this electronic connectivity all sort of works great for us. And there's still, a lot of the U.S. where that struggles. My field is agriculture, and agriculture and rural America has always struggled with connectivity. It's just been a part of that challenge of that far rural mile, if you would. But anyways, yeah.
Elon Musk is going to figure that out with Starlink, right? Or whatever that is going to be like.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a path, and kudos to him to have that passion for just wanting to pull that off. Son of a gun, we're just going to do this, and I think he'll succeed. There's a Tesla in my garage. So.
Well, my Cybertruck's on order, but it's not here yet.
There you go. Yeah.
So I love the concept of people basically just picking up and going and living anywhere in the country and being able to work from anywhere, because it just takes the sort of concentration, like the concentration, it equalizes the concentration across the board, right? Because you can't say, everyone goes to the Bay Area because this is where all the mines are. Well, if the mines are everywhere and you can connect with them anywhere you are, then it kind of spreads the intelligence all over the place.
Right? Yeah, when I mentioned those two engineers in the family, and One is, is fairly senior and responsible for a lot, and there is a real worry though at coming back to that real creative way, achieving that creative conversation. And again, this is good. Or if I saw a dozen of you on the screen, but there's something about having a team of people around and scratching things out on a whiteboard. And yes, I know there are technologies that are coming along to help that, but there is a nuance there that I think everybody's going to be on the hunt for how to translate that casual creative conversation and get it into this world. And everyone's trying to think, what can we do to make that happen?
Well, so. I think what's happened is that we are trying to replicate the in-person experience. This, and I think that's wrong. We need to leapfrog it. We need to go beyond that, right? Are you familiar with the Beam Technologies Telepresence robot?
No.
It's like an iPad on wheels, and you can sort of control it remotely. So it's got a camera and all that stuff, and your face shows up on it, and you can drive around. I work with the IFTF sometimes, the Institute for the Future here, and they had a couple there, and they were trying them out. And it allows you to basically telepresently be almost anywhere, but you see your face through this robot, and you can control it from your computer remotely. And I was talking with somebody there about it, and they were going, "Oh, yeah, this is okay, but it's not that great. It's not the same as the in-person experience." And I'm thinking, well, the problem is that we kind of stop and say we want to make it as good as the in-person experience, where we should be thinking, okay, let's use technology to make it better than the in-person experience. And I don't think we're there yet. We're still trying to get to the point where it's like what we're doing in person. If we could just figure out how to go better than in person, then that would, we don't know yet.
Chris, our kids are way ahead of us, and our grandkids are way ahead of them. They really are. And I have great hope because, I think we are creating a very innovative set of youngsters that think immediately that way, and that they can live that way. In fact, in some ways, they would rather be doing that. The worry I have is, well, even though they're passionate about wanting to connect digitally and such, are we missing something? This has been a crazy year, 2020, and probably not one that many of us would want to ever experience again. And in some ways, frightful in many different ways, without going into too many of the that craziness. But you do worry how fragile we can all be as a society, and how if we don't learn to figure things out and build bridges, we can blow up bridges very fast, very easily between people.
It's always easier, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, like I was going to sort of harken back to what I said earlier about a crisis actually helps us do better. I mean, we end up with, if we didn't have this crisis, then probably not a lot of innovation would come out of it. It's kind of like remember the great stagnation? People were saying, oh, there's, not much is going on the innovation front. And I think the reason why that is because if we're sort of sitting fat and happy and we don't have any crises to deal with, then we're not driven to innovate that much. But now that we're in this situation, it's kind of like, okay, what do we need to do to get out of it? Not only get out of it, be better on the other side. Because people, the other day I was at a meeting and people were sharing, what did you do during the pandemic, right? What did you pick up? How did you improve yourself during the pandemic? Almost everybody did something to actually improve themselves. So it's kind of like the old, never let a crisis go to waste. Well, never let a crisis go to waste in improving yourself or making yourself better off for the next black swan that's going to come along.
Right. It's that Sputnik moment, that beeping sound, that ignited, everything that was going to bring incredible technologies to us. And you know, I think in many ways, this moment is not unlike that. I was giving a presentation to our Board of Regents and explaining to them that I had one note in my slides about reading the tea leaves. And I said, you know, this is a year that, you know, we are seeing incredible risk for humanity, and therefore, you know, typically we react to that, and we're going to stand up. An amazing amount of research to try to understand what happened biologically to us as human beings with this virus, and more importantly, what about the future? And I think this is going to spin a tremendous amount of research, exactly as you're saying, to try to learn from this and see what we can do better the next time. Yeah. And even, you know, even sociologically, I mean, what happened with our culture here in the U.S. and our society, and what do you learn from that? How do you learn from that? I think there'll be a lot of studies about behaviors, and so it should be interesting in the next few years.
Yeah, I think I saw a cartoon of set in 2030 or something like that. You know, history students trying to remember everything that happened in 2020.
Yeah,
you're just like, oh, my head's gonna explode.
Yes, yeah, indeed, indeed. But you're right. It is a energy and a motivator for creativity. You know, you also said something about that sense of passion. And, you know, I have some good friends with the X Prize, and they're always on the hunt for those, you know, looking at solutions, and it's fed by a lot of sense of just outright passion. Just, my God, there's got to be a better way. Let's figure it. And as I said, trying to instill that same sense with students, it's so motivating. It's so empowering to be able to drive that passion, and I think this is one of the things we need to work out and figure out using technologies. How do we capture that same sense and get it across to people?
Exactly, and I think it's key that we also do it in an optimistic way, right? Because there's so many people who sort of, they're so negative about technology, but it's just a tool. It can be used in so many different ways. We can use it to help improve human lives, or we can use it to make human lives worse. And we have to make sure that we're focusing on the flourishing side, that we can make humans better by using technology.
Yeah. Well, my wife and I, we have 6 kids and 9 grandchildren, and technology is the way we have the Brady Bunch, 3 boys, 3 girls. We brought families together. But technology is the way we keep that all wired and connected, and in ways that, you know, our parents never could have dreamed. And
oh yeah, absolutely. And is it because are they all local, or they all sort of?
No, most of them are at a distance, and but you know, I've been a big encourager of my kids to explore and do that. And I said, we all have airplanes. Of course, we used to have airplanes. We don't, you know, today too much, but and technology. And between that, we can be back together again. And so, anyways, yeah.
Awesome. So tell me where you think things are going. So imagine 10 years out, 2030. Where are we? What's happening? What's the world like? What's the education sector like? What's food like?
Yeah.
What's happening in 2030? I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Well, you know, crystal ball gazing. Boy, if I had a real crystal ball, wouldn't that be nice? I really think that there's a lot of wake up occurring, and you know, through rough times, you do learn to rethink things and realize how precious things are. I'm not sure we will ever go through a year like this, sociologically, politically. I think we're all waking up to a real passion to figure out how we get along and figure it out and caring about each other and figure out ways for us to be present to each other and connected with each other and understanding where to find a path forward. And that's going to translate to a lot of things. In the educational world, you will see a very different kind of universities in the future that does a lot of hybrid thinking and takes the best of what we've learned this year and the best of what we've always done and mesh it together. One things we have learned, even in this most recent semester where it's been so hard with our students, is our students crave social interaction. And universities are a wonderful place to learn, but they're also a wonderful place to grow up and a wonderful place to learn this social interaction. And that's hard. We will always seek ways to create that experience. I actually think the world of food ahead is exciting. I think we're becoming much more of a global entity in terms of what we appreciate in our foods and about our foods. And I had the pleasure of working for 10 years with FDA on their science board and USDA for 6 years on their science board, and so proud of our scientists here that try to keep us safe, but are also looking for that future. And a lot of that future is, I think, on appreciating us as a global species and a global environment. The flavors of native born and the last 100 years of the US are great, but the flavors of the world are wonderful.
Oh, yeah.
And we want to bring that all together and keep introducing ourselves to that. So absolutely, when you look at the glass half full, half empty, by gosh, it's half full. And we need a whole lot more yet to come. So,
well, I gotta say, I gotta tip my hat to food scientists, because I don't know how the hell you make those chips taste exactly like the actual product. Like last year, Lay's had those gyros chips, the Greek gyro sandwich.
Yes.
Chips.
Yeah. Yes.
And I bite into that and it tastes exactly the same. I mean, I don't know how it's like, there's this, greasy undercurrent that lamb has, lamb, when you eat lamb, it's kind of like that. And it's like, there it is. I'm like, how the hell did you do that? You guys are geniuses.
Oh, the chemistry of that is amazing. And the idea of you taking a bite out of a chip and you can't just have one, they really is a flavor chemistry behind that designed to make you, I just got to have another.
It was so accurate. It just floored me. And I'm like, it was because, I'm my background's Greek and I'm Greek and I've had many of these lamb gyros in the past, and I just couldn't get over how accurate the taste was. It's just amazing what you can do in food science.
It's a great career path. Honestly, I was president of the Institute of Food Technologists, and we just, we would gather together in Chicago, 21,000 of us, and it's an incredible food fest. But that industry of constantly innovating, trying to create new foods, and then figure out a way to package them and deliver them. Mm-hmm. It's always reinventing itself. Now, of course, you see all of the ready to make at home meals. The industry is constantly rethinking itself, how to deliver food in different ways, and ways that we can be more engaged with it. And it's a great career path. I always tell kids, I said, you might think about medicine, but honestly, you want a job right away. Over here in the food side, it's a big one, and it's growing all the time.
People gotta eat. People gotta eat.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And they enjoy it too. So
Yeah, and the more you enjoy it, you know, the more it is. And it's funny because it's kind of like the other day, you know, my wife posts stuff on Facebook all the time, and the only things that she gets millions of clicks on is the food, right? She did a really nice stir fry, posted it on there, 150 likes or whatever, you know, just post
Yeah.
an anniversary picture, like 10. So food is one of
Oh,
those things
true.
that people just sort of connect over, and they love it. They just
Yeah.
food. So I mean, food
Well,
science is a great career. See, now I'm thinking if I wasn't in technology or architecture, now I'm thinking food science would have been my third choice because I
oh,
think
it's a place to have passion, and you can be everything from a wine connoisseur to a steak connoisseur, anywhere in between. A
fantastic.
billion
Son's at
opportunities.
Davis and he's taking history, but I want to see if I can direct him into food science because you know maybe he can make some good stuff for us later on.
You know, and ignite those passions. So anyway, well, Chris, this has
That's
been
great.
fun.
How what do you can you just like would you like to send me your bio and I'll put it in the show notes and people can get
Sure.
in touch with you. Is there anything like typically my audience are corporate innovators and startup founders. Would you like any from either of those groups to contact you for any particular reason or are
Happy
you
to do so. You know, it's I've been in this game long enough that you end up collecting stories, and I'll tell you one quick one. If we have, let's say we have a few more minutes, I'll give you one quick story. I was building a research center. At that time, I was at Texas A&M, and it was something called an electron beam technology. And what we were doing was essentially creating a system that would treat hamburger and kill all of the E. coli in there, so you could have steak tartare or very safely, etc. It's a great technology; it works beautifully. But I was building that, and my assistant knocked on the door and said, "There's a telephone call for you, Dr. McLellan, and I think you better take this." I said, "Well, let me finish my meeting with these folks." She said, "Dr. McLellan, it's the Secret Service, and they're asking for you by name, and they want to speak to you this minute." I said, "Okay." So I dismissed the group and picked up the call, and they said, "Dr. McLellan, this is so-and-so Secret Service." And I said, have you watched the news and saw what happened yesterday?" I said, "Yes, I understand you must be talking about the anthrax in DC." Said, "Yes." Said, "Well, you're building a machine there that we think may be effective in neutralizing that threat.
Oh, wow.
And we really need to have an answer to that." I said, "Okay, there's probably a logic to that works." I said, "Good, we need an answer in 3 hours." And I said, "Okay." So I literally pulled some of our chief engineers off construction, brought in a number of our other research scientists and said, "This is the situation. What do you think?" And we went scouring. Everybody went hunting, and we finally found a paper done in Europe, and basically that paper proved that it would indeed work. So I called back to the Secret Service, said, "Yep, this technology will work, and absolutely it will be a solution." And sure enough, 3 weeks later, I don't know what it was, $40 million or something, they bought a bunch of these machines, and
Nice.
I was treating the U.S. mail going into the government for a while.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
Great.
and so crazy stories like that happen over time, and you never know what you're going to run into where you have to have some sort of solution for folks.
Exactly. Well, that's phenomenal. Well, thank you so much. It's been great talking with you.
Absolutely enjoyed it. I'll drop you a note.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Chris.
Bye.
Bye-bye.